Welcome to Curious. My name's Laura and I'm really pleased you've chosen to watch this video. The Curious playlist is an exploration of some of life's biggest questions. You might not even be thinking about God or faith, but you might have some questions about life, and this is a great place to start. Today we're looking at the missing piece. So you may have felt like life has got something missing. In 2020 we all felt like a huge part of life was missing. But we're talking about that longing for something more meaningful, or just that sense that something maybe isn't quite complete. We're going to hand over to Leon Evans now. He's the lead pastor of Life Central Church, and he is going to open up this theme a little bit more.
Frodo began to feel restless, and the old path seemed too well trodden. He looked at maps and wondered what lay beyond their edges. Maps made in the Shire showed mostly white spaces beyond its borders. And you know, Frodo from Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, he senses what many of us sense deep down. There must be more to life. We sense there must be more than what we can see, touch, eat, wear, buy, or put in our hair. We sense there's a missing piece, and without it, the picture isn't quite complete. A little bit like this jigsaw I've got right here. There's a picture on the front. It's a 1,000-piece jigsaw. Imagine getting to the end. You've all done it, 999, and you just can't find that last piece, the missing piece. For me, that's where faith comes in. Okay, here's the God bit, I hear you say. I'm out. Wait. We will come to the God bit, but first, let's think about the faith bit. You see, faith is literally a confidence or a trust in a person, a thing, or a concept. In one sense, everyone has faith, but what that faith has to offer depends on what or who that faith is in. First, prove to me there's a God, then we can chat about faith, I hear you say. Well, if you can't explain something with the five senses, does that mean it can't be true? In other words, the five senses, see, hear, touch, taste, or smell. But is that a rational position? Let's take love. You can't see it. What about freedom? You've never smelt it. But we've experienced both, and we sense that they're true. And whilst it's true that you can't put God in a test tube or under a microscope, but you can't do that with love or freedom either. So instead of looking for proof, what if we considered evidence? Many years ago, I was a young kid, and some of the older girls in our street used to push me around the street on my bike, and my mum used to say, one day you're going to get hurt. But I was a cocky little lad, and so I said, where's the evidence for that? Well, one day, there I am at our front door, banging on the front door, screaming because my lip has burst open and blood is spurting out. There was the evidence in front of me. Let's consider the evidence for the existence of God before we talk about what faith has to offer. The first thing is this: cause and effect. This is where we think that science has disproved God. Far from it. The Big Bang discovery hasn't unraveled the notion of faith in God, but actually suggests evidence for the existence of God. Remember a guy who I knew many years ago was a famous preacher in the UK, and he was on a TV show along with an atheist, and the atheist says, you as a Christian expect us to believe that something created something out of nothing. That's ridiculous. To which the guy said, and you expect us to believe that nothing created something out of nothing. Which is the more ridiculous option? Number two, design and order. Designs imply a designer. What came from the Big Bang? It wasn't chaos, it was order. In fact, the speed of our planet is such that if it was to increase by 1.4 times, we would fly out of the solar system. The problem with evidence is it's easy for us to deny the evidence that points towards conclusions that we are uncomfortable with. Physicist Stephen Hawking, he said, it would be very difficult to explain why the universe should have begun in just this way, except as the act of a God who intended to create beings like us. And he wasn't a person of faith, and yet that's what the evidence suggested. Voltaire, a writer and philosopher, very critical of Christianity, he said this: if God did not exist, it would be necessary for us to invent him. Chance is not an explanation, it's a non-explanation. It doesn't make rational sense. But there's a third evidence, and I think it's this: it's changed lives. Maybe the most powerful evidence of all. People who've discovered that there's more to life than what they've already seen. So what does faith in God have to offer? Let me give you some ideas. Firstly, I think it offers some sense. You see, we sense that there's more. We sense that there's something missing, and faith in God makes sense. Now, let me be clear. There's a lot that doesn't make much sense to me, even with faith in God. But without faith, it makes no sense at all. We have 2 sons, and our youngest son, who's in his 20s now, Simeon, when he was about 2, was diagnosed with learning disabilities, complex special needs, autism, and we were told as young parents he would never live an independent life. And it was devastating for us, and it's difficult even now. And sometimes it doesn't make any sense. But without God, without faith, it makes no sense at all. And then there's meaning, the meta-narrative, the big story of the world and how my life fits into that. And then I think faith has to offer purpose. Why am I here? What can I contribute to the world? And then there's resource, strength beyond myself. There was this kid in a sandbox, and he had a big rock in the middle of the sand, and he couldn't move it, and he tried everything he could. And eventually there was a shadow appeared over him, and he looked up and he saw his dad, and his dad bent down and moved the rock, and the kid could carry on playing. The kid said to his dad, "Dad, I tried everything and I couldn't move the rock." The dad said, "No, son, you didn't try everything. You didn't ask me." That's what faith in God, it brings a resource and a strength outside of yourself. And then finally, there's peace. Not like a piece of the puzzle, but the peace. And Jesus put it this way: I give you the gift of peace, not the kind of fragile peace given by the world, but my perfect peace. What does faith have to offer? Sense, meaning, purpose, resource, and peace. I think that's what most of us sense deep down is missing. And just like Frodo, will we let that restless feeling cause us to venture out from our paths and maps and look beyond? Maybe then we could find for ourselves that missing piece. Curious? I hope you are.
Maybe you still have got loads of questions from what Leon said, or maybe you're just curious to know a little bit more. Either way, please stick with us. Don't click another video, keep watching. We are going to hear from Kirsty now and her personal story of what happened when she found that missing piece.
My aunt was like a second mum. She was always there for me, and I felt comfortable with her. I could talk to her about anything, even things that I couldn't with my mum. She was my security. She was the person who would stand up for me and make sure I was okay. And when I was 8, she passed away from cancer. I remember the day when she died. Everyone around me was really upset, but I couldn't cry. I couldn't show any emotion, so I kept all my pain inside. At the time, it made me feel empty, yet so overwhelmed. I felt like I needed a really big hug. You feel helpless and vulnerable, and it's annoying because nothing that anyone can say or do will help you. When I was 13, I moved to Hong Kong. I was really sad to leave England because that meant leaving all my friends and my home behind. I showed a lot of anger towards my parents. It was really hard for me to make friends at my new school, and I really struggled with the move. I started to show my emotion by hurting myself. I thought it was normal, but then I went to see a psychiatrist and I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. Throughout that time, I was going to church, but I wasn't going for the right reasons. I remember being on holiday in the UK, and I was invited to this Christian event for young people. I'd been there before, but this time was different. I really let myself loose with God and became vulnerable. I didn't want to live the way that I was living anymore, and I just really wanted to give things to God. My biggest fear was seeing my parents in pain over the things that I'd been doing to myself, and I just couldn't bear the thought of that. So I remember being prayed for that night and asking God if he's real, to show me. And that's when I felt his embrace for the first time. It was like that hug that I had always wanted. I knew that this was when I needed to make more of an effort. I needed to read my Bible and really know his word in order to get through my depression. Since I've made the choice to follow Jesus, I've really got involved with church. I've made loads of friends and lead a weekly Bible study group at my house. I feel so much happier, like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders, knowing that God really values me and he wants the best for me.
If you're curious, maybe the next step is to do what Kirsty did. Say to God, if you're real, show me. I mean, what have you got to lose? And if you're not quite ready to do that, then make sure that you check out our next video titled, If God is Real, What's He Really Like? Each Curious session is designed to open up thinking about faith. If you'd like to ask more specific questions about God, then we'd encourage you to think about our Alpha course, which is designed for exploring the Christian faith. And you can sign up for that by texting LCC Alpha followed by your name to 60777. That's 60777. But whatever you do next, make sure that you join us for Curious Part 2.